Today's video features a Japanese saw that might make you challenge everything you thought you knew about the humble handsaw. So Axminster Tools saw my path guide system video recently, got in touch with me and asked me if I would be prepared to try out a couple of tools for them. Not being paid for this, literally it's just sending me things for a good honest review. So here we are today looking at these Shokunin Tatebiki Dovetail Saw and Kataba Crosscut Saw. Now I thought to myself, I can't really see when I'm going to be finding any need for these, particularly given that in my sort of DIY carpentry I don't do a lot of dovetail joints, that sort of thing. However, I am doing something today that I thought would be useful to give these a little try out on. I'm right in the middle of my bedroom refurb, and right now I'm cutting in the window boards to go on the windowsills that have been completely insulated. I've done this recently, I'll be doing a video on it. The idea being to eliminate all cold bridges. So you see the window boards are all marked out, ready for cutting. I don't know why I'm doing this today because I'm massively up against it. I've got to get all this work done before my plasterer Gerard arrives on Monday. But anyway, here we go. So we've got the Dovetail Saw and the Crosscut Saw. I'm going to today be using the Crosscut Saw. I really wonder how they're getting on with these because it's such an enthusiast product. The two saws I use most often in my sort of DIY carpentry are this Universal and this lovely little floorboard saw, which has finer teeth and gives you a really clean cut. Note the steel backer strip that gives the saw its rigidity during the cut. This is the Kataba Crosscut that I'll be featuring today. The Tatebiki Dovetail Saw has a much longer backer strip. I'm guessing because the saw doesn't plunge all the way through the wood, so they can make it longer for a really rigid cut. There's no flex on that saw at all, whereas obviously the crosscut saw has quite a lot of flex in it. You then have this rather bizarre, but I suppose very traditional Japanese handle, which looks like it's made from something like tulip wood. And then the handle itself is wrapped in rattan, as is traditional with Japanese saws, which the saw fits into and tightens up like that. I've got to say, armed with this saw, I do sort of feel like an extra on the sort of Last of the Samurai film set. And the first thing I'd say, it's a very different sawing position to what you'd have with your typical handsaw, which, let's face it, we're all really used to. Now, for the purpose of this review, I'm going to do 3 cuts. This is the final cut that I need to make. I'm also going to do a cut next to it with the jack, and next to that I'm going to do the floorboard. It's a bit of a gamble because this is the actual cut I need to make on my window board, and I'm doing it for the first time with this rather strange meat cleaver style saw. Now the point of these Japanese saws is that you are able to achieve an unlimited depth of cut. The saw cuts on the pull stroke rather than the push stroke, which is meant to give you a lot more control over the cutting action. It will cut softwood, hardwood and plywood. The teeth crucially have 3 cutting edges, which are meant to give you a much straighter, faster, cleaner, less splintered cut. And finally, the blade is fashioned from super hard nickel plated steel, which is corrosion protected. And because the blade is so thin, it obviously removes a lot less debris, and that obviously means you're using up less energy whilst you're cutting the wood. So we've got 2 issues as far as I see it initially. 1, strange chopping position on the saw, and 2, the fact that it cuts on the pull stroke rather than a typical Western saw that cuts on the push stroke. Right, please don't be too critical of the wobbly table in the next clips. This is a temporary table up here whilst I'm refurbishing the bedroom, and it does have a little bit of movement in it, which actually makes the performance of the saw all the more remarkable. Starting to cut my, I think I'm going to have to put my finger on top to guide it. It feels more natural than putting my finger down the side. I'm now going to do the same thing with my Owen Universal Saw. And finally with my Irwin Jack floorboard saw. I've actually stopped halfway through the cut I was making with the Irwin floorboard saw. This isn't really designed for thick surfaces like MDF, and the saw was catching. So what's really interesting about this, if we zoom in on the cuts themselves, first thing you notice is that the roughest cut, as you would expect, is with the Irwin Universal Saw. It was the easiest cut to make because it's got the thickest teeth of the three. You compare the Irwin with the Shokunin, and then finally the Irwin floorboard saw. But it's definitely the most untidy cut, and you can see the jags left on the surface, both on the top and also underneath, particularly underneath. The floorboard saw has a pretty neat cut and doesn't have much splintering on the surface, which is obviously where you'd want it to be as clean as possible. But interestingly, underneath, it's pretty bad, almost as bad if not worse than the Irwin Universal Saw. Now obviously it doesn't matter so much underneath, but it is nevertheless quite interesting. I would point out that this is not the newest saw. The teeth are possibly getting a little bit blunt. But then you compare it with the Shokunin, which is obviously the star of the show in terms of the cleanness of the cut. There's no splintering whatsoever on the surface, and interestingly the cut underneath is as clean as it is on the surface, if not cleaner. The other point to mention, if I just zoom in, just look at the cleanness of that cut. I mean, MDF never looks that clean. So that's it everyone for today. I've got to say, Axminster sells some lovely stuff, and when they sent me this I was a little bit sceptical. I thought maybe you've lost your focus here bringing in this tool, but I have to say I've been really impressed. In spite of the flex in the saw, it gives you that lovely true cut. It was also incredibly easy, effortless to use. It sawed through the wood almost as quickly as the Universal Saw did. And I deliberately didn't speed up the video because I wanted you to see how quick and effective it was cutting through the wood. And given the quality of the products that they have on their website, I can sort of see why they brought this in. If any of you have got one, do let me know, or if you've got any thoughts or comments on it, please leave them in the comments section below. Will I be using it going forward? Undoubtedly. I think every DIYer needs at least one Universal Saw. Where previously I've used my floorboard saw for the sort of finer cut, the more precise cuts, this undoubtedly replaces that second finer saw, just because of the way it passes through the wood almost undetected in such an effortless manner. And whilst I'm not going to be doing any dovetail joints anytime soon, I can see the Tatebiki saw being really useful for things like mitered corners on cupboard mouldings, of which I've got quite a lot to do in here. As ever, if you found today's video useful, please click on the like button below. Oh, and details of this tool and links to Axminster where you can buy it will be in the description at the end of the video, which, as I always say, you can access on a phone by clicking on the little arrow next to the title of the video, or on your computer by clicking on the show more button. So that's it for today. If you're new to my channel, as I always say, I would absolutely love to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here. See you soon.